might be coming to help us.
The rain had been falling for nearly 4 hours. Not the violent kind. Not the dramatic thunderstorm people remembered. This was worse. A cold, steady rain that seemed determined to soak through everything it touched. The kind that found its way through jackets, through boots, through hope. The streets outside Asheville were nearly empty by the time Marcus Hale rode down Route 74. His motorcycle headlights cut through the gray evening like twin knives. Water sprayed beneath his tires. The sky had already darkened despite it being barely past 5 o'clock. Most people were heading home. Most people had somewhere warm waiting. Marcus was one of them. At least technically. The Iron Brotherhood clubhouse sat 20 miles away. A hot meal, dry clothes, friends, a fire burning in the common room. That had been the plan. Then he saw the bus stop. At first he almost missed it. Just another rusted shelter beside the highway. The kind people stopped noticing years ago. But something felt wrong. Marcus couldn't explain it. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe experience. Maybe loneliness recognized loneliness. Whatever it was, he found himself slowing. Then looking again. And that's when he saw the boy. Small. Still. Curled beneath the bench. Marcus immediately pulled off the road. His motorcycle rolled onto the gravel shoulder before stopping completely. Rain hammered against his leather vest. For a moment he simply sat there. Watching. The kid wasn't moving much. No umbrella. No backpack. No adult nearby. Nothing. Just a little boy sitting beneath a rusted bus stop while freezing rain poured around him. Marcus killed the engine. Silence rushed in. Only rain remained. The biker removed his helmet slowly. Something about the scene bothered him. Deeply. Children weren't supposed to look like that. Not alone. Not in weather like this. Not on a highway. Then he noticed something stranger. The boy wasn't crying. Most children would be. Most children would be scared. Angry. Panicked. This one wasn't. He simply stared across the road. Watching traffic. Watching every passing vehicle. As if expecting someone. As if waiting. Marcus stepped closer. Water dripped from the brim of his weathered cap. Still the boy didn't react. Not until the biker stopped directly in front of him. Only then did the child look up. The sight nearly broke Marcus's heart. The kid's lips were blue. His hands shook. Rainwater ran down his face. His oversized sweatshirt looked 3 sizes too large. And his eyes. Those eyes looked exhausted. Far too exhausted for someone so young. Marcus crouched slowly. Hey there. No answer. The boy simply watched him. Carefully. Like a stray animal, deciding whether someone was safe. Marcus recognized that look. He'd seen it before. In shelters. In hospitals. In veterans. People who'd learned disappointment too many times. What's your name? Silence. Rain tapped against the metal roof above them. Finally the child spoke. Eli. His voice was barely audible. Marcus smiled gently. Nice to meet you, Eli. The boy looked away again. Toward the road. Toward nothing. Marcus followed his gaze. What are you doing out here? No answer. The biker waited. Years of leadership had taught him patience. Eventually the answer came. Waiting. For who? The little boy swallowed. My mom. Something tightened inside Marcus's chest. She's coming back? The child nodded. When? A pause. Then. Soon. The answer sounded rehearsed. Like something he'd repeated to himself many times. Marcus glanced at the empty road. Then back at Eli. Rainwater continued dripping from the boy's sleeves. The kid was freezing. Absolutely freezing. Without another word, Marcus removed his oversized denim jacket. The thick garment had kept him warm through countless rides. Now he held it toward the child. Here. Eli stared at it. Then stared at him. Suspicion appeared immediately. No. Marcus blinked. No. The boy shook his head. I can't. The answer surprised him. Why not? My mom said not to take things from strangers. Marcus almost smiled. Even now. Even freezing. Even alone. The kid remembered what he'd been taught. Fair enough. He held the jacket out again. Then don't take it from a stranger. The boy frowned. Marcus extended his hand. My name's Marcus. A long pause. Then tiny fingers reached forward. Shaking badly. The handshake lasted less than a second. But it changed something. Not much. Just enough. Marcus offered the jacket again. This time Eli accepted. Slowly. Carefully. The oversized denim nearly swallowed him whole. But immediately color began returning to the boy's face. Marcus stood. We need to get you warm. Eli looked alarmed. No. Why not? What if she comes back? There it was. The real problem. The reason he hadn't left. The reason he'd stayed. The The reason he'd endured hours of freezing rain. Hope. Simple, heartbreaking hope. Marcus looked down the highway, then back at the child. How long have you been waiting? Silence. The boy lowered his eyes. Since yesterday. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Yesterday. Not hours. Not an afternoon. Yesterday. The realization hit hard. This little boy had spent an entire night waiting beneath a bus stop. Alone. In the rain. Waiting for someone who never returned. Marcus slowly sat beside him. The rusted bench creaked. Have you eaten? No answer. That was answer enough. The biker nodded once. Then stood. We're getting dinner. The boy immediately shook his head. No. Eli. I have to stay. Marcus studied him carefully. Then made a decision. A simple one. The kind that changes lives. Okay. The boy blinked. What? We'll stay. The child looked confused. Marcus pointed toward his motorcycle. I know a diner 5 minutes away. Silence. We'll eat. Still silence. Then we'll come back and wait. Hope appeared. Small. Fragile. But visible. You will. Marcus nodded. Absolutely. The boy finally stood. Slowly. Stiffly. Like every muscle hurt. And maybe it did. The rain continued falling as they walked toward the motorcycle. Neither knew it yet. But that simple ride was about to change both their lives forever. The diner smelled like coffee, bacon, fresh bread, and warmth. The moment Eli stepped inside, several heads turned. Not because of Marcus. The bikers came there regularly. People were used to them. No. People stared because of the boy. Because he looked like he'd been standing in the rain for a week. Because he looked hungry. Because he looked forgotten. Marcus guided him toward a booth. The child moved cautiously, studying everything, watching everyone, like someone expecting danger. That bothered Marcus. Children weren't supposed to move like that. Not little boys. Not boys who should have been worrying about school and cartoons. The waitress appeared almost immediately. Mary, 60 years old. Sharp tongue. Soft heart. She stopped when she saw Eli. Oh my goodness. The boy lowered his eyes. Mary looked at Marcus. What happened? Found him at the bus stop. The waitress frowned. In this weather? Marcus nodded. Mary didn't ask another question. She simply disappeared. 3 minutes later, hot chocolate arrived. A giant plate of food followed. Then another. Then another. The boy stared. Wide-eyed. Marcus smiled. Go ahead. Eli hesitated. Then reached for a French fry. Then another. Then another. The transformation happened quickly. Within minutes, the child was eating like someone who hadn't seen real food in days. Which worried Marcus even more. The biker watched quietly. Something wasn't adding up. Nothing about this situation felt normal. Eventually, the boy slowed down. The edge of hunger faded. For the first time all evening, he looked almost relaxed. Almost. Marcus took a sip of coffee. So, Eli froze slightly. The child already knew questions were coming. Marcus kept his voice gentle. Tell me about your mom. Silence. The boy stared into his hot chocolate. She said she'd be back. When? Another pause. 2 days ago. Marcus nearly closed his eyes. 2 days. Not yesterday. 2 days. The realization made everything worse. Much worse. Where did she go? I don't know. Did she say? No. The answers came quietly. Almost automatically. As if he'd repeated them many times. Marcus nodded slowly. What's your last name? The effect was immediate. The boy froze. Completely. Something changed. Something defensive. Something fearful. The biker noticed it instantly. The child lowered his eyes. His fingers tightened around the mug. Eli. No answer. The diner suddenly felt very quiet. Marcus waited. Patiently. Finally the boy spoke. I don't want to say. The answer surprised him. Not because of what was said. Because of how it was said. Fear. Real fear. The kind that comes from believing a name matters. The kind that comes from believing someone might find you. Marcus leaned back slightly. Okay. The child looked surprised. No pressure. The tension eased slightly. Not much. But enough. Then something caught Marcus's eye. A photograph. Partially visible inside the boy's pocket. Old. Worn. Folded countless times. Marcus pointed gently. Who's that? Eli immediately pulled the photo closer. Protective. Again that same reaction. Interesting. Very interesting. After a moment the child slowly handed it over. Marcus studied the image. A young woman. Smiling. Standing beside a man wearing an old military jacket. The photograph looked decades old. Weathered. Faded. But something about it felt familiar. Very familiar. Marcus stared longer. Then his expression changed. Because he recognized something. Not the people. The insignia. A military patch. One he hadn't seen in years. One connected to someone he'd once known. The biker felt a chill run down his spine. Suddenly, this wasn't just a lost child. This wasn't just abandonment. This wasn't just a sad story. The photograph connected to something else. Something buried. Something from the past. Marcus looked up slowly, then back down at the image. The feeling grew stronger. He knew that insignia, and somehow, against all odds, it had just walked into his diner tucked inside a little boy's pocket. And for the first time that night, Marcus began wondering if finding Eli at that bus stop had been an accident at all. Marcus didn't sleep much that night. The rain continued long after midnight, drumming softly against the clubhouse roof while most of the Iron Brotherhood settled into their rooms. The little boy was asleep now. Finally. After a hot meal, a shower, clean clothes, and repeated assurances that nobody was going to force him back out into the storm, the kid had fallen asleep on a couch in the common room with a blanket wrapped around him. One arm still clutched the photograph. Even sleeping, he wouldn't let it go. That bothered Marcus. Not because it was strange, because it meant the picture was all the boy had left. People protect what matters most. And Eli protected that photograph like it was his entire world. Marcus sat alone at a wooden table beneath a hanging lamp. The photograph lay beside a steaming mug of coffee. For nearly an hour he stared at it, studying every detail, every crease, every faded corner. The image showed a smiling young woman standing beside a tall man wearing an old military field jacket. The picture looked at least 20 years old, maybe older. Time had faded the colors almost completely. Yet one thing remained clear. The patch. Marcus rubbed his thumb across the image. He knew that insignia, not because it was common, because it wasn't. The patch belonged to a small Marine reconnaissance unit that had existed years ago, years before Marcus joined the military, years before most people even remembered it. Yet somehow the image felt familiar. Too familiar. The clubhouse door opened. Tank Wilson stepped inside carrying 2 coffees. The giant biker looked half awake. His beard looked like it had lost an argument with a lawnmower. You still staring at that thing? Marcus accepted the coffee. Can't shake it. Tank sat down. The chair groaned beneath his weight. The giant biker studied the picture. What's special about it? Marcus pointed. The patch. Tank squinted. Military. Yeah. You know it. Marcus nodded slowly. Sort of. The giant biker leaned closer. Sort of. Marcus sighed. I knew somebody who wore one. Tank waited. So. Marcus stared at the photograph again, then finally said the name. Daniel Mercer. Tank frowned. The name sounded familiar. Then realization hit. The Marine? Marcus nodded. Daniel Mercer. One of the most respected veterans Marcus had ever known. A man remembered for courage, honor, and a tragedy nobody fully understood. Tank leaned back. I thought he died years ago. He did. The room fell quiet. Marcus continued staring at the image. Something was connecting. He could feel it. Pieces moving together, but not yet forming a complete picture. Then footsteps echoed across the clubhouse. Eli, the little boy, stood near the hallway entrance. Still sleepy, still wrapped in a borrowed sweatshirt. The child immediately noticed the photograph. His expression changed. Fear. Instant fear. Marcus gently slid it toward him. Sorry. The boy grabbed it quickly, then hugged it against his chest. Tank exchanged a glance with Marcus. Interesting. Very interesting. The giant biker softened his voice. Who's in the picture? Eli looked down. My mom. Marcus nodded. And the man? The little boy hesitated, then shrugged. I don't know. That answer surprised both bikers. You don't know? The child shook his head. No. Marcus frowned. Your mom never told you? No. Something about that didn't fit. Children usually know family. Even absent family. Especially absent family. Yet Eli seemed genuinely uncertain. The biker carefully chose his next question. Where did you get the picture? The answer came instantly. My mom gave it to me. When? The boy thought for a moment. A long time ago. What did she say about it? Another pause. Then, she said if anything happened, I should keep it safe. The room went silent. Tank looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Tank. Neither liked the implications. Children aren't usually given instructions like that. Not unless adults expect trouble. Real trouble. Marcus leaned forward. Did she say why? The little boy shook his head. No. Then something else surfaced. A memory. Marcus could see it happen. The child's face changed slightly. What? Eli looked up. She said someday somebody would understand it. The biker's pulse quickened. Somebody would understand it. Not recognize it. Not find it. Understand it. Meaning there was something hidden. Something important. Something beyond the photograph itself. Marcus carefully held out his hand. Can I see it again? The boy hesitated, then handed it over. This time Marcus examined the back. Nothing. At first. Just faded paper. Water damage. Scratches. Age. Then he tilted it toward the lamp. And froze. Writing. Very faint. Nearly invisible. Hidden beneath years of wear. Tank leaned forward. What? Marcus slowly turned the image. A handwritten message appeared. Faded blue ink. Almost impossible to read. Almost. The room became completely silent. Marcus read the words. Then read them again. And again. Because he couldn't believe them. The message said, "If anything happens to me, find Daniel." Tank's eyes widened. Marcus felt a chill travel down his spine. Because Daniel Mercer had been dead for years. Which raised an even bigger question. Who wrote the message? And why did they believe Daniel was the answer? The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Marcus contacted everyone he knew from his military years. Old Marines, retired officers, former reconnaissance personnel, anybody connected to Daniel Mercer. Most knew the same story. Decorated veteran. Respected man. Mysterious death nearly 12 years earlier. Case closed quickly. Questions left unanswered. The deeper Marcus dug, the stranger everything became. Then one call changed everything. A retired Marine named Frank Dobbs answered on the third ring. After hearing Daniel's name, the old veteran became quiet. Very quiet. Finally he spoke. "You found something, didn't you?" Marcus immediately sat upright. "What do you mean?" A long pause. Then, Daniel always said if anything happened to him, somebody would come looking. The biker felt a knot form in his stomach. What exactly did he mean? The old Marine laughed bitterly. That's what everyone wanted to know. Marcus stared out the clubhouse window. Rain still falling. Questions multiplying. And somehow a little boy at a bus stop had reopened a mystery buried for over a decade. The story was becoming much larger than abandoned children. Much larger than missing parents. And Marcus was beginning to realize that finding Eli might not have been coincidence. Not at all. The address took nearly 2 hours to locate. It sat outside town on a forgotten stretch of road surrounded by overgrown weeds and dying pine trees. The trailer looked abandoned. Not old. Abandoned. There was a difference. Old buildings simply aged. Abandoned buildings felt like people had left in a hurry. This place felt abandoned. Marcus knew it immediately. So did Tank. The two bikers stood beside their motorcycles studying the property. A rusted swing moved gently in the wind. The front steps sagged. Mail overflowed from a damaged box. And every window was covered. Not by curtains. By blankets. Interesting. Very interesting. Marcus killed his engine. You seeing this? Tank nodded. Somebody didn't want people looking inside. The two men approached carefully. The gravel crunched beneath their boots. No movement. No sound. Nothing. Yet the place felt wrong. The front door stood slightly open. Only an inch. Just enough. Marcus exchanged a look with Tank. Then slowly pushed it open. The smell hit first. Dust. Mold. Stale air. The smell of absence. The trailer was empty. Mostly. Furniture remained. Clothes remained. Photographs remained. People didn't. The giant biker walked slowly through the living room. Everywhere he looked he saw evidence of a life interrupted. A plate still sitting on a table. Children's drawings taped to a wall. A half-finished puzzle. Normal things. Frozen in time. Marcus crouched beside one of the drawings. Crayon. Simple. A house. A woman. A little boy. The word MOM written across the top. His chest tightened. Eli. No doubt. The child had lived here. The question was, what happened? Tank stepped into a bedroom. Then immediately called out. Marcus. The biker joined him. The room belonged to a child. No question. Small bed. Books. Toys. Stuffed animals. Everything untouched. Everything left behind. Marcus walked toward the dresser. A photograph sat on top. The same woman from Eli's picture. Older. Smiling. Holding a little boy. No doubt now. This was home. Or had been. Then Tank found something else. Paperwork. Stuffed beneath the mattress. Bank notices. Past due statements. Property documents. Marcus sat down and began reading. The story became clearer quickly. Financial trouble. Missed payments. Legal disputes. Collection notices. Pressure. Lots of pressure. Then he found a name. One appearing repeatedly. A company. Lane Development Holdings. The biker frowned. Tank. The giant man looked over. Yeah. Marcus handed him the paperwork. Recognized that. Tank studied the document. Then shook his head. No. Neither did Marcus. Yet the name appeared everywhere. Loans. Property claims. Legal notices. All connected to one person. Victor Lane. The owner. The same man apparently trying to acquire the trailer property. Interesting. Very interesting. Then Marcus opened the final folder. And everything changed. Inside sat a birth certificate. The biker stared. Read it once, then twice, then a third time, because suddenly the entire story shifted. The little boy's full name sat clearly on the page. For the first time since finding him, Marcus knew exactly who Eli was. And more importantly, exactly why somebody might want him hidden or gone. Because beneath the father's section sat a name Marcus never expected to see. A name connected directly to the mystery surrounding Daniel Mercer. A name capable of changing everything. The biker slowly lowered the document, his pulse racing. Tank immediately noticed. What is it? Marcus looked up. The answer barely escaped his lips. We've been asking the wrong questions. The giant biker frowned. What questions should we be asking? Marcus stared at the certificate, then toward the empty room where Eli once slept, and finally said, we need to figure out who benefits if this boy disappears. The silence that followed felt heavy, because both men suddenly knew. This was no longer a story about abandonment. This was a story about motive. And somewhere out there, someone had won. The drive back to the clubhouse felt longer than it should have. Rain continued falling across the mountains. The trailer faded into darkness behind them. Yet Marcus couldn't stop thinking about the birth certificate. Or the name. Especially the name. The little boy sleeping on a couch inside the Iron Brotherhood clubhouse wasn't just another abandoned child. He was connected. Connected to Daniel Mercer. Connected to the photograph. Connected to whatever had happened more than a decade ago. And suddenly that made him dangerous. Dangerous to someone. The question was who? And why? The clubhouse was unusually quiet when they returned. Several bikers sat around the common room. Coffee mugs. Television muted. Conversations low. All of them watching Eli. Not in a threatening way. In a protective way. The little boy sat at the far end of the room coloring inside an old activity book somebody had found. Tank smiled. Looks different already. Marcus nodded. He did. The dark circles beneath Eli's eyes had faded slightly. His shoulders weren't constantly tense. He wasn't flinching every time a door opened. Small improvements, but important ones. Because healing starts small. Very small. Then the front door opened. Everyone turned. A woman stepped inside carrying a folder. Sarah Montgomery. The social worker. Mid-30s. Professional. Sharp. The kind of person who had spent years dealing with difficult situations and difficult people. Initially, she'd wanted nothing to do with bikers. Now she found herself walking into their clubhouse voluntarily. Life was funny sometimes. Sarah spotted Marcus immediately. We need to talk. The seriousness in her voice caught his attention. That sounds promising. It isn't. The room quieted. Marcus led her toward a side office. Closed the door. Waited. Sarah placed the folder on the desk. Then exhaled. I checked every database available. Marcus sat down. And no records. His stomach sank. No records. Sarah nodded. No active school registration. No medical records. No recent government assistance. No foster history. No missing persons report. The biker frowned. That's impossible. I know. The social worker rubbed her forehead. It's like the kid disappeared from the system years ago. Silence. Heavy silence. Marcus hated hearing that. Because children don't disappear from systems accidentally. Not usually. Somebody makes that happen. Somebody removes paperwork. Somebody buries information. The realization bothered him deeply. Sarah opened the folder. There's more. Marcus looked up. The social worker slid several papers across the desk. Property ownership documents. Corporate records. Financial statements. All linked to one name. Victor Lane. Again. The same name found inside the trailer. The same name connected to legal disputes. The same name appearing everywhere. Interesting. Very interesting. Sarah leaned forward. Do you know who Victor Lane is? Marcus shook his head. The answer surprised him. He owns almost half the county. The biker raised an eyebrow. Half. Businesses. Commercial property. Development projects. Investment companies. The social worker paused. Influence. That last word carried weight. Real weight. Marcus immediately understood. Money mattered. Influence mattered more. Especially in small towns. Sarah continued. The strange part isn't that his name appears. It's where it appears. Marcus waited. The social worker tapped the documents. Every legal issue involving Eli's mother somehow leads back to Lane. That wasn't coincidence. Not even close. The more they investigated, the more Victor Lane appeared. Like a shadow behind everything. Quiet. Hidden. But always present. Marcus stared at the paperwork. A feeling was growing. The same feeling he'd experienced years ago during military operations. The feeling that a larger picture existed just outside view. A picture they weren't seeing yet. Then Sarah spoke again. There's another thing. What? The social worker hesitated, which immediately got Marcus's attention. What? She looked uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. Someone's been asking about him. The biker's expression hardened. Who? We don't know. How? Anonymous inquiries. Silence. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Anonymous inquiries. That wasn't good. Not good at all. About Eli? Sarah nodded. Specifically. The biker leaned back. Thinking. Calculating. Someone knew. Someone knew the little boy existed. Someone knew he had resurfaced. And somebody was looking. The question wasn't whether that was bad. The question was how bad. That evening brought another surprise. A visitor. One nobody expected. Judge Robert Harper. The arrival alone shocked everyone. The judge rarely left the courthouse. And he certainly didn't spend time inside biker clubhouses. Yet there he stood. Tall. Gray-haired. Respected. Holding an umbrella. The common room fell silent. Marcus approached. Judge. The older man nodded. Marcus. Neither smiled. Both understood something serious was happening. The judge looked around. Then his eyes landed on Eli. The little boy sat near the fireplace reading, completely unaware. For just a moment something flashed across the judge's face. Recognition. Real recognition. Marcus noticed immediately. So did the judge. Interesting. Very interesting. The older man cleared his throat. We should talk privately. 10 minutes later they sat alone. The judge stared into his coffee for several moments before speaking. When did you find him? Marcus didn't answer immediately. Why? The judge looked up. Because I think I know who he is. The room seemed to shrink. Marcus sat forward. What do you mean? The judge sighed. The sound carried years of regret. Daniel Mercer. Marcus froze. The judge noticed. You're already looking into him. Not a question. A statement. The biker nodded. Slowly. Judge Harper looked toward the window. Toward the rain. Toward memories. Then he said something that changed everything. Daniel never trusted Victor Lane. Silence. Absolute silence. The judge continued. They hated each other. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Now they were getting somewhere. Finally. Why? The older man shook his head. Money. Land. Business. Family. The answer somehow made things more confusing. Not less. The judge leaned closer. Then lowered his voice. After Daniel died, people got rich. That sentence lingered. Heavy. Ugly. Uncomfortable. Because Marcus immediately understood the implication. Someone benefits from tragedy. Someone always benefits. The question was who? And the answer seemed increasingly obvious. Later that night, Eli overheard something. Not intentionally. Children rarely do. They simply wander into conversations adults assume they aren't hearing. Marcus and Tank sat outside beneath the covered porch discussing Daniel Mercer. Neither noticed the little boy sitting quietly nearby. Not until it was too late. His father never got justice. The sentence escaped before Marcus realized it. The reaction was immediate. A small voice from the darkness. My father. Both bikers froze. Eli stepped forward. Confused. Hopeful. Terrified. All at once. The little boy stared at Marcus. You know my father? The biker's heart sank. Because there it was. The question. The question he'd been trying to avoid. The question he wasn't ready to answer. Yet. Marcus crouched, trying to remain calm. Eli. The child interrupted. You know him. Not a question. A realization. The little boy's eyes searched Marcus's face desperately, looking for answers. Any answers. Finally he whispered. Is he alive? The silence that followed broke Marcus's heart. Because the boy already knew. Deep down. He already knew. But hope makes people ask questions anyway, even when they're afraid of the answers. The next morning began with a knock on the clubhouse door. 3 sharp knocks. Then silence. Marcus answered. Nobody stood outside. At first. Then he noticed something. A package. Small. Brown. Wrapped in plastic against the rain. No return address. No note. Nothing. Just a package. The biker immediately felt uneasy. Years of experience taught him when something felt wrong. And this felt wrong. Very wrong. He carried it inside. Tank joined him. So what's in it? Marcus shook his head. No idea. The package opened easily. Inside sat a single envelope. Old. Yellowed. Fragile. The handwriting on the front stopped both men cold. Daniel Mercer. Neither spoke. For several seconds neither moved. Then Marcus carefully opened it. The letter inside looked decades old. Folded countless times. Protected. Preserved. Important. Very important. The biker began reading. And within 30 seconds, everything changed. The letter wasn't written to Marcus. It wasn't written to the club. It wasn't written to anybody currently alive. It was written to Eli. Years before Eli even knew it existed. The room felt completely silent as Marcus read. Daniel's words were simple, honest, direct, the way Marines often write. If you're reading this, something happened to me. Marcus paused. The sentence alone carried enormous weight. Then continued. There are people who will try to take what's yours. Don't believe them. Don't fear them. And don't let them decide who you become. The biker felt chills. Tank looked equally stunned. The letter continued. One paragraph after another, each revealing pieces of a story. A story Daniel apparently expected someone would eventually uncover. Then came the line that changed everything. The line that explained why Eli had been abandoned, why his mother had hidden, why Victor Lane kept appearing, and why people were suddenly searching for the boy. Marcus read it twice, then a third time, because he needed to be sure. The letter said, Victor Lane knows the truth about your inheritance. The room went silent. Inheritance. There it was. The missing piece. The missing motive. The reason. The entire puzzle suddenly shifted. This wasn't random. This wasn't abandonment. This wasn't bad luck. Someone stood to gain from Eli disappearing. Someone stood to gain a lot. Marcus continued reading. Daniel's words grew darker, more urgent, more personal. And finally the truth emerged. Victor Lane hadn't just fought Daniel Mercer. He had benefited from Daniel's death. Benefited enormously. The realization hit like a hammer. Everything finally made sense. The trailer, the documents, the hidden records, the anonymous inquiries, the fear, the secrecy, all of it. Then the clubhouse phone rang. Loud, sharp, unexpected. Everyone looked up. Marcus answered. A woman's voice greeted him. Breathless, panicked. Sarah. Marcus. What happened? The social worker sounded terrified. I think somebody knows where Eli is. The biker's expression hardened instantly. Who? The answer came immediately. Victor Lane. And for the first time since finding the little boy in the rain, Marcus realized they weren't just uncovering an old mystery anymore. They were running out of time. The atmosphere inside the Iron Brotherhood clubhouse changed after Sarah's phone call. Nobody said it aloud. Nobody needed to. The situation had become real. Dangerously real. Until now, Victor Lane had been a name. A shadow. A distant figure hidden behind paperwork and legal documents. Now he was actively searching for Eli. And that changed everything. Marcus sat at the head of the long meeting table while rain tapped softly against the clubhouse windows. Around him sat nearly 30 club members. Some older, some younger, some veterans, some mechanics, some truck drivers. Different backgrounds, different lives. Yet all of them shared the same expression. Concern. Marcus looked around the room, then spoke. We need to make a decision. Nobody interrupted. Nobody joked. The seriousness was obvious. Tank folded his arms. You worried he'll come after the kid? Marcus didn't hesitate. Yes. Silence followed. Heavy silence. Then one biker near the back spoke. What exactly does this Victor guy want? The answer came immediately. Control. Marcus slid Daniel Mercer's letter onto the table. And if the letter is right, Eli stands between him and something valuable. The room grew quiet again. The bikers had spent years protecting one another. Years helping strangers. Years supporting veterans and families in crisis. But this felt different. This felt personal. The child wasn't simply passing through anymore. He'd become part of their lives. Part of the clubhouse. Part of the routine. And nobody liked the thought of somebody hunting him. Marcus looked around, then asked the question, what happens if this gets worse? Tank answered first. Then we don't let him face it alone. Several heads nodded. Then another. Then another. The momentum grew quickly, because despite appearances, biker clubs often function like families. And families protect their own, even unofficial ones. Especially unofficial ones. Meanwhile, Eli remained completely unaware of the conversation happening upstairs. The little boy sat in the garage section of the clubhouse helping Tank organize tools. Or at least pretending to help. Mostly he handed the giant biker random objects and asked questions. Lots of questions. Tank secretly enjoyed every second, though he'd never admit it. The enormous biker held up a wrench. What size is this? Eli squinted dramatically. Huge. Tank laughed. That's not a size. It should be. The little boy smiled. A real smile. One of the first genuine smiles anyone had seen from him. And it immediately transformed the room. For a brief moment, he looked like an ordinary child. Not abandoned. Not frightened. Not carrying secrets. Just a kid. Tank noticed it. And something unexpected happened. The giant biker felt protective. Very protective. More than he expected. Maybe because Eli reminded him of someone. Maybe because he knew what loneliness felt like. Or maybe, because sometimes the people who need family most are the people who don't have one. Whatever the reason, Tank found himself watching over the boy constantly, checking if he'd eaten, making sure he slept, making sure nobody upset him. The role had developed naturally, almost without notice. Then Eli looked up. "Can I ask something?" Tank nodded. "Sure." The little boy hesitated, then asked, "How long have you known Marcus?" The giant biker smiled. 20 years. Eli's eyes widened. "Really?" "Yep." The boy thought for a moment. Then, "Has he always helped people?" The question surprised him. Tank leaned back, thinking, then smiled again. "Pretty much." Eli stared at the floor, quietly, then whispered, "That's nice." The simplicity of the statement nearly broke Tank's heart, because children usually assume adults help people. Only children who've been disappointed repeatedly find kindness unusual. The following day, the club organized something unexpected. A fundraiser. Not for publicity, not for attention, for Eli. Word spread quickly through town. School supplies, clothing, books, winter gear, food. Donations arrived steadily. Then rapidly. Then overwhelmingly. People who'd never met the boy wanted to help. Some dropped off backpacks. Others delivered toys. A retired teacher arrived with boxes of children's books. A local sporting goods store donated jackets. A diner owner provided meal vouchers. The response surprised everyone, including Marcus. Especially Marcus. Because communities often mirror leadership. When people see others helping, they become more willing to help themselves. And Eli's story had touched something deeply. The little boy watched the donations arrive throughout the day. At first he seemed confused, then overwhelmed, then emotional. Eventually Marcus found him sitting alone behind the clubhouse, holding a brand new backpack. The biker sat beside him. For several minutes neither spoke. Finally, Eli broke the silence. "Why are they doing this?" Marcus already knew what he meant. Why are strangers helping? Why do they care? Why me? The questions were written all over the child's face. Marcus looked toward the mountains, then answered honestly, "Because sometimes people get a chance to do something good." The boy considered that, then asked another question. One Marcus wasn't expecting. "Do you think my mom knew people like this existed?" The biker felt his throat tighten, because he heard the real question underneath. Did my mom leave me because nobody cared? Marcus shook his head immediately. "No." Eli looked up. Marcus continued, "I think she knew." The little boy stared at him, then quietly nodded, not fully convinced, but wanting to believe. 3 days later, everything changed. Again, Sarah arrived carrying documents. Lots of documents. And a worried expression. Marcus immediately knew something was wrong. The social worker didn't sit, didn't smile, didn't waste time. Victor filed. The room froze. Marcus slowly stood. Filed what? The answer hit like a hammer. A custody petition. Silence. Absolute silence. Tank nearly knocked over a chair standing up. What? Sarah nodded grimly. He wants legal custody. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The absurdity alone was staggering. A man connected to years of suspicious behavior suddenly wanted responsibility for the little boy? Nobody believed it. Not for 1 second. Marcus took the paperwork. Began reading. The situation became worse with every page. Victor's attorneys claimed. Eli required stability. Eli needed family placement. Victor was a distant relative. Victor possessed financial resources. Victor could provide opportunities. The language sounded professional, reasonable, convincing, and completely wrong. Marcus felt anger building. Not explosive anger. The dangerous kind. The quiet kind. Because for the first time Victor Lane wasn't operating in shadows. He was moving openly. And he was coming for Eli. The courthouse stood at the center of town like a monument to order. Brick. Stone. History. Everything about it projected authority. Normally that reassured people. Today it didn't. Today it felt intimidating. Especially to a little boy. Eli sat quietly beside Marcus on a wooden bench, dressed in a borrowed button-down shirt, hair neatly combed, hands clasped tightly together, trying very hard to look brave. The effort broke Marcus's heart. Children shouldn't need courage for courtrooms. Yet here they were, waiting. The biker glanced down. You okay? Eli nodded immediately. Too quickly. Which meant no? Not really. Marcus smiled gently. You don't have to pretend. The boy looked away, then whispered. What if they make me go? The question lingered. Painful. Honest. Marcus wished he had a guaranteed answer. But he didn't. So he told the truth. We'll fight. The child nodded. That seemed enough. At least for now. The courtroom filled quickly. Victor Lane arrived surrounded by attorneys. Expensive suits. Expensive watches. Expensive confidence. The businessman looked exactly like someone used to getting his way, which irritated Tank immediately. The giant biker sat in the gallery, gripping the bench hard enough to crack it. Several club members joined him. Quietly, respectfully. Their presence alone changed the room. Not threatening. Supportive. A visible reminder that Eli wasn't alone. Not anymore. Victor noticed. His expression tightened slightly. Good. Judge Harper entered promptly. The room stood, then sat. The hearing began. Victor's lead attorney spoke first. Smooth. Professional. Persuasive. He painted a compelling picture. A wealthy relative. A vulnerable child. A chance for stability. A responsible home. Everything sounded reasonable. Until Marcus remembered the trailer. The hidden records. The inheritance. The letter. The lies. Reasonable wasn't always truthful. Sometimes it was simply well rehearsed. Sarah testified next. And everything shifted. The social worker presented facts. Real facts. Not polished arguments. Not emotional speeches. Facts. The missing records. The suspicious paperwork. The timeline inconsistencies. The anonymous inquiries. Each revelation chipped away at Victor's narrative. Slowly. Methodically. Deliberately. The businessman remained calm. Outwardly. But Marcus noticed small cracks appearing. Tiny signs of discomfort. A clenched jaw. A tightened hand. A shifting posture. Pressure was building. Then came the surprise. The judge himself started asking questions. Lots of questions. More than anyone expected. Questions about timelines. Questions about property transfers. Questions about financial interests. Questions Victor clearly didn't enjoy answering. The atmosphere changed immediately. Because everyone realized something. Judge Harper wasn't simply listening. He was investigating. The businessman realized it too. His confidence began fading. Subtly, but noticeably. Then the courtroom doors opened. Late. Unexpectedly. Everyone turned. A woman entered. Mid-60s. Gray hair. Determined eyes. Carrying a worn leather folder. Nobody recognized her. At least initially. Judge Harper did. His expression changed instantly. Marcus noticed. So did Victor. And unlike the judge, Victor suddenly looked terrified. Not nervous. Terrified. The woman walked forward calmly. Then addressed the court. My name is Evelyn Mercer. The room froze. Mercer. The same name. The same family. The same mystery. Marcus immediately understood. This wasn't just another witness. This was the witness. The one Daniel's story had been waiting for. The one Victor never expected to appear. And judging by the panic spreading across the businessman's face, she was about to destroy everything. The courtroom became so quiet that the ticking wall clock suddenly sounded loud. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Every eye remained fixed on Evelyn Mercer. Even the attorneys seemed unsure what to do. Victor Lane certainly knew. The color had drained from his face. The wealthy businessman who had entered the courtroom looking confident now looked like a man watching a dam crack beneath his feet. Judge Harper adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Mercer. Evelyn nodded respectfully. Your Honor. The older woman walked slowly toward the witness stand. She carried herself with the calm confidence of someone who had spent years waiting for this exact moment. Marcus immediately noticed something. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't angry. She looked relieved, as if a burden she had carried for years was finally becoming lighter. The court clerk administered the oath. Then everyone waited. Evelyn sat, folded her hands, and looked directly at Victor Lane. The businessman immediately looked away. Interesting. Very interesting. Victor's attorney stood first, attempting control, attempting damage limitation, attempting anything. Mrs. Mercer, could you explain your connection to this case? The older woman smiled sadly. I can. Then she pointed toward Eli. The little boy sat beside Marcus watching everything unfold. Confused, hopeful, terrified. The emotions crossed his face one after another. Evelyn's voice softened. That child is my grandson. The room exploded. Gasps. Whispers. Movement. Even the judge looked surprised. Marcus felt Eli freeze beside him. The little boy stared, completely stunned. Victor looked like he'd been punched. Because for the first time since this began, somebody had publicly connected Eli to the Mercer family. A connection Victor clearly wanted hidden. The attorney quickly intervened. Can you prove that? The older woman opened the leather folder. Yes. She handed documents to the court. Birth records. Family records. Photographs. Letters. Years of evidence. One document after another. Each one strengthening the connection. Each one destroying Victor's position. The attorney's confidence began evaporating. Fast. Then came the real bombshell. The reason Victor looked terrified. The reason Evelyn had remained silent for so long. The reason Daniel Mercer's name kept resurfacing. Judge Harper reviewed several documents, then looked up. Mrs. Mercer. Yes, Your Honor. What exactly are you alleging? The courtroom went silent again. Everyone understood the importance of the question. Evelyn took a deep breath, then answered, I'm alleging that Victor Lane stole Daniel Mercer's inheritance. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The accusation landed like thunder. Victor immediately stood. That's absurd. His voice sounded desperate. Not offended. Desperate. A subtle but important difference. Evelyn ignored him, then opened another section of the folder. More documents emerged. Property transfers, financial records, partnership agreements, legal filings. The pieces began forming a picture. A very ugly picture. Years earlier, Daniel Mercer had owned significant property rights tied to land development around the county. After Daniel's death, those rights mysteriously shifted. Quietly, gradually, without public attention. And somehow, Victor Lane benefited enormously. The courtroom listened in complete silence. Because the story wasn't simply about money. It was about opportunity. And opportunity creates motive, especially when millions of dollars are involved. Marcus glanced toward Eli. The little boy understood almost none of the legal details. But he understood something important. People were finally talking about his family. Honestly, openly, for perhaps the first time in his life. The child leaned slightly closer, listening carefully, trying to understand, trying to piece together his own story. A story nobody had fully explained. Until now. Then Evelyn revealed the final piece. The piece that shattered everything. She produced a sworn affidavit, signed years earlier, never filed, never revealed. The document came from a former accountant who worked directly with Victor Lane, a man now deceased. But before his death, he documented everything. The transfers, the manipulations, the hidden agreements, the pressure campaigns, the entire scheme. The courtroom fell into stunned silence as Judge Harper reviewed the affidavit. Victor looked physically ill. His attorney looked horrified. Marcus realized something. The businessman wasn't worried about custody anymore. That battle was over. Now he was worried about survival. Because the truth wasn't simply surfacing. It was flooding. For nearly an hour, testimony continued. Each revelation worse than the last. By the end, Victor Lane looked like a completely different man. Gone was the confidence. Gone was the authority. Gone was the polished image. Now he looked tired, defeated, exposed. Exactly what happens when secrets finally meet sunlight. Judge Harper eventually called a recess. The courtroom emptied slowly. Conversations erupted everywhere. Reporters, observers, town residents, everyone discussing the same thing. Victor Lane, Daniel Mercer, the inheritance, the little boy, the truth. Eli remained seated, quiet, thoughtful. Marcus stayed beside him. Eventually the child spoke. Very softly. Was my dad a good person? The question caught Marcus off guard. Of all the things happening around them, that was what mattered most to Eli. Not money, not inheritance, not court. His father. Marcus didn't hesitate. Yes. The little boy stared ahead. Really? Really? The child nodded slowly, then asked another question, one that nearly broke Marcus's heart. Would he have wanted me? Silence. Heavy silence. Marcus looked at him, really looked at him, then answered honestly. He would have loved you. The little boy lowered his eyes. And for the first time since Marcus found him at the bus stop, he cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. The tears of a child finally hearing something he'd needed to hear his entire life. The final ruling came late that afternoon. Judge Harper's decision was direct. Victor Lane's custody petition was denied. Completely. Every claim rejected. Every argument dismissed. The evidence had destroyed his credibility. The courtroom erupted. Not with cheering. With relief. Pure relief. Eli simply sat frozen, as if he couldn't process it. Marcus placed a hand gently on his shoulder. The boy looked up. The biker smiled. You don't have to go. And just like that, the weight disappeared. Life became quieter after the hearing. Not immediately. There were still investigations. Still legal proceedings. Still questions. But the fear was gone. The uncertainty was gone. The constant feeling that someone might come take Eli away had disappeared. For the first time since Marcus found him in the rain, the little boy felt safe. Truly safe. Weeks passed. Then months. Winter arrived. The mountains turned cold. Christmas decorations appeared throughout town. And something remarkable happened. Eli changed. Slowly. Naturally. Beautifully. The frightened child who once sat alone beneath a bus stop began acting like a child again. He laughed more. Talked more. Smiled more. The clubhouse became home. Not officially. Not legally, but emotionally. And sometimes emotional homes matter most. Tank taught him basic motorcycle maintenance. Several club members helped with homework. Others coached baseball. One older biker spent hours teaching him chess. Without realizing it, the Iron Brotherhood had done something extraordinary. They'd become family. One evening shortly before Christmas, the club gathered in the common room. Fireplace burning, coffee brewing, snow falling outside. The atmosphere felt peaceful. Then Eli asked a question. A simple question. One nobody expected. The little boy looked around the room. Then toward Marcus. Do I have to leave? Silence. Instant silence. The entire room froze. Because everyone understood what he meant. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Eventually. Someday. Would he lose this too? Would this family disappear as well? The fear behind the question was impossible to miss. Marcus looked around the room. Then at the men he'd spent decades riding beside. Brothers. Friends. Family. The answer suddenly seemed obvious. The biker president stood. Then spoke. I think we should vote. Confusion spread briefly. Then understanding. Tank smiled immediately. Several others did too. Marcus looked around the room. All in favor of making sure Eli always has a place with us. The response happened instantly. Every hand rose. Every single one. No hesitation. No discussion. No debate. Just certainty. The little boy stared. Speechless. Tears filled his eyes. Again. But these were different. Not tears of sadness. Not tears of fear. Tears of belonging. The following spring brought another surprise. A community celebration. Not for the court case. Not for the inheritance. For Eli. The town organized a festival. Families attended. Businesses donated. Neighbors volunteered. The little boy who once sat forgotten beneath a bus stop now found himself surrounded by people who cared. The transformation felt almost unbelievable. Yet it was real. Very real. 1 year later. Rain fell again. Not heavy. Just enough to create memories. Marcus rode alone through town on his motorcycle. Eventually he reached the old bus stop. The same one. The same rusted shelter. The same place where everything began. He stopped. Killed the engine. And looked. The bench remained. The road remained. The rain remained. But everything else had changed. Laughter echoed nearby. Marcus turned. And smiled. Eli stood across the street with several bikers. Laughing. Running. Living. The little boy wasn't cold anymore. Wasn't alone anymore. Wasn't waiting anymore. He had a backpack. Friends. A future. A family. The kind he'd always deserved. A few moments later, Eli spotted him. The child waved immediately. Then ran across the street. Not because he needed help. Not because he was scared. Just because he wanted to say hello. Marcus smiled. The boy reached him. Breathing hard. Happy. Safe. Everything Marcus had hoped for. They stood together beside the old bus stop. The same place where fate changed direction. Finally, Eli looked at the shelter. Then at Marcus. You know something? What? The little boy grinned. I'm glad it rained. Marcus laughed softly. Most people would hate that weather. Most people would wish it never happened. But not Eli. Because without the rain, without the cold, without the bus stop, they never would have met. Marcus looked toward the clubhouse visible in the distance. Then at the family they'd built. And realized something. Sometimes heroes don't rescue children from danger. Sometimes they rescue them from loneliness. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give a child isn't protection. It's belonging.